Drak'tharon Keep is found in Grizzly Hills and contains 3 of probably the easier achievements that go towards your glory of the hero. The first boss you're going to encounter is Trollgore, which has got a Crush, which deals high physical damage to the tank, an Infected Wound, which is dispellable, which applies a disease to a player, increasing physical damage taken by 15% for 10 seconds. He's got Consume, where Trollgore consumes all enemies within 50 yards in line of sight, dealing shadow damage and increasing damage done by 5%. Corpse Explode, which causes a Drak'tharon invader to explode after a few seconds, dealing nature damage to all players within 5 yards. And finally, Drak'tharon invaders attack both players and Trollgore during this fight. These count as enemies for Consume. Tactics-wise, this is quite simply a tank and spank fight. Normally, most groups will likely have enough damage just to kill the boss, dispel the Infected Wound disease before Consume gets too high, and just stay spread to avoid additional damage from Corpse Explode, but just cleave the adds down. But for the achievement, you need to defeat Trollgore before he reaches 10 stacks of consumption. This can be a tough achievement. The best way to handle this is to have the tank the boss at the bottom of the stairs, with the boss behind a pillar. The healer should stand at the bottom of the stairs in line of sight with a tank, but out of line of sight of the boss, whilst 1 or 2 DPS stand at the top of the stairs to kill all adds that spawn and ensure they never get in line of sight of Trollgore. The tactic varies on your group DPS, but you can either have 2 DPS killing the boss line of sighting before each consume to ensure the boss only gets 1 stack at a time, which will be from the tank, or alternatively, you can have the DPS nuke the boss and attempt to kill it before the boss consumes 4 times, because 3 consumes will be giving the boss 9 stacks. If you do leave 2 DPS at the top, I'd recommend having the last DPS pop in and out of line of sight between consumes to do as much damage as possible on the boss, but giving you 9 consumes before the boss has to die. The next boss is actually optional, because you can just walk past him. That's what optional means. And it's Novos the Summoner. So in phase 1, he's got Arcane Field, where he's just immune to all damage. He's got Arcane Blast, which being too close to Novos will cause him to Arcane Blast, dealing arcane damage and knocking you back. And then there's just a whole bunch of adds in phase 1. So you've got Crystal Handler, which just deals frontal shadow damage. Risen Shadowcasters, which just cast random shadow bolts at people. Hulking Corpse, which thunderclaps nearby players, reducing their attack, movement speed, and dealing nature damage. Fetid Troll Corpse, which are just non-elite enemies that just melee nearby enemies. They're just worthless. And that's it. Just kill all the adds. Phase 2, Novos lowers his arcane field and begins his assault. He's got Blizzard, which is cast on an area, dealing frost damage and slowing movement speed. You've got Frostbolt, which is cast on the highest threat target, so your tank. And you've got Wrath of Misery, which curses a random player, dealing shadow damage every 2 seconds for 8 seconds. Tactics-wise, for phase 1, the fight occurs over 2 fronts. One is the staircase, where the adds will spawn and proceed down the stairs to fight the players. 4 of these crystal handlers must be killed in order for it to phase into phase 2. This is just an ad management phase. And in phase 2, this is where the boss fight really starts. Avoid the blizzards, dispel Wrath of Misery, and other than that, the boss should die very quick. It's quite common practice to have 1 DPS at the top of the stairs killing the adds before they ever get down, and everybody else at the bottom of the stairs, but the healer just paying attention to the DPS that stood at the top of the stairs. Achievement-wise, you've got to kill Novos without allowing any undead minions to reach the floor. This is an oddly worded achievement. The crystal handlers do not count towards this achievement. The fetid troll corpses, hulking corpses, and risen shadowcasters do. The aim of this achievement is to kill all undead minions before they reach the bottom of the staircase. The easiest way to handle the achievement is to have 2 DPS with off healing and good AoE, so like a rep paladin would be particularly strong here. Stand on the staircase and continue to kill all the adds that spawn. Even the hulking corpses can be killed relatively quickly and pose minimal threat even to a DPS. The remaining tank and DPS should be killing the crystal handlers as they spawn in an effort to phase the boss as soon as possible. The healer can stand at the bottom of the stairs to heal both groups. So really, the normal way I said of doing the adds is actually the way you get the achievement anyway, so all good. King Dred, again, is an optional boss. You can just completely bypass him, but he is a big dinosaur, so you're probably going to want to kill him because he looks quite cool. But Grievous Bite deals physical damage and applies a dot that deals physical damage every 2 seconds until the player is fully healed. Mangling Slash, which attacks the tank, inflicting physical damage and increasing damage taken by bleeds by 75%. Fearsome Roar, which just roars, reducing the damage of all players. Piercing Slash, which attacks the tank, dealing physical damage and reducing their armor by 75%. Bellowing Roar, which fears all players within 35 yards for 4 seconds. So if you've got like really enhanced range, like you can DPS from 40 plus yards, you'll be alright. stand at max range. Raptor Call, which just calls 1 or 2 raptors to assist. The Drakari Gut Rippers just attack the highest threat target, reducing stamina by 15%, and the Drakari Scythe Claw attack the highest threat target and apply a physical dot, dealing damage every 3 seconds for 15 seconds. Tactics-wise, this is one of the more difficult fights in a 5-man heroic, to be fair. It's very healing and tanking intensive. You can kill the raptors in the boss room to stop the boss being able to call any others to assist. There's 7 in total. Even without the raptors, the tank damage in this fight is extreme. The Grievous Bite cannot be ignored and must be fully healed. Having Grievous Bite and Mangling Slash up is likely to lead to an unhealable tank, especially when you put in the boss's attacks with this as well. Piercing Slash and Mangling Slash are rotated. Your tank is never likely to be at full mitigation during this fight ever, and will also be taking lots of damage. The fear is what kills most groups, as the tank cannot survive 4 seconds of unmitigated damage. Using cooldowns before this and having a Tremor Totem are the best ways to handle it. Killing any raptors that are called is normally a good idea. The additional damage and the debuff will likely overwhelm your tank at the start of the expansion. The achievement for this requires you to kill 6 Gut Rippers or Scythe Claws during the King Dred fight. This requires fantastic tank and healing. The typical strategy is to pull King Dred and 3 raptors at the start of the fight and pop cooldowns to nuke down the raptors as soon as possible, then slowly pulling 1 raptor at a time whilst cleaving the boss. Once you've killed 6 in total, you can finish the boss. Making sure Grievous Bite is healed immediately is key to avoiding as much tank damage as possible, as well as having a Shaman both for Bloodlust and Tremor Totem. Also, the Shaman can use Earth Elemental as well if you've got one, because that can assist in some of the tanking at the start when the damage is going to be at its highest. And finally, Prophet Tharon Ja. So phase 1, it's got a Shadow Bolt volley which fires Shadow Bolts at all players. It's got a Rain of Fire, which is ground targeted Rain of Fire damage, dealing damage every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. Got Curse of Life, which curses a player, dealing shadow damage every 3 seconds for 9 seconds. This effect falls off if the player goes below 50% health. And it's got Decay Flesh, which is the transitional spell between phase 1 and phase 2, and it stuns all players for 3 seconds, burning their flesh away. At which point is when phase 2 starts, and all players are turned into skeletons and have access to new abilities. You've got Touch of Life, which is a low shadow damage attack that heals the player. You've got Slaying Strike, which is a moderate damage spammable strike. You've got a Taunt, which taunts the boss for 3 seconds, and you've got Bone Armor, which reduces damage taken for 10 seconds. At which point the boss's abilities are now Lightning Breath, which hits the highest threat target, dealing nature damage. Eye Beam, which glares at a random player, dealing nature damage every 2 seconds. A Poison Cloud, which summons a cloud dealing nature damage every second that players are stood in it. And Return Flesh, which is the transitional spell from phase 2 back to phase 1. All players will be stunned for 3 seconds and return you back to your normal form. It sounds very complex and maybe even overwhelming with the sheer amount of abilities that we've just covered, but actually it's very simple. In phase 1, move out of fire. Don't panic too much around Curse of Life. Either out heal it or allow it to fall off naturally, and then at 50% health, just top the people up. In phase 2, the ideal strategy is to allow people with Bone Armor to taunt the boss and rotate through the team using Touch of Life to stay alive and switching threat when Bone Armor is going to wear off. Avoid Poison Clouds and nuke the boss when you go back into phase 1. And that's it. So in the last boss, when you're transformed, just if you've got Taunt ready and Bone Armor both together, then it's your turn to do it, and then let someone else do it, and yeah, no one really takes any damage. It's easy. But anyway, if you enjoyed that, like, subscribe, check out Rested XP in the link in the description, and roll the outro. There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes. Everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name. And you get access to members-only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.